Good morning, guys. Welcome to yet another session of Current Affairs with Photon Civil Service Academy. So today we look into highlighted news of the past 2 days. Alright, the first news is that CYTB test introduced by Kerala government to detect and treat latent tuberculosis infections. So can you tell me how tuberculosis is spread, or what causes tuberculosis? What sort of uh, micro organism causes tuberculosis? Can you tell me? Anybody? Is it a viral infection, or is it a bacterial infection? Plasmodium? What is it? Tuberculosis. Anybody? Wild guess is also fine. No? Okay, we'll look into the details. Now, what exactly is the CYTB test? It's a bacterial infection, right? Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, right? So, this particular test, that is CYTB test, has been developed by Kerala government, and it's a very simple test. It is highly specific. It gives high accurate results, and it's very user friendly as well. Okay, it's highly user friendly, it's highly specific, and it's very accurate as well. So that itself gives this particular new technological intervention by the Kerala government its edge, right? So in this particular test, the CYTB test, what exactly is done is a zero point 0.1 ml dose of specific Mycobacterium tuberculosis antigens. Okay, Mycobacterium tuberculosis cause specific this antigens that are specific to Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Antigens are certain proteins, all right, that are specific to these Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This is injected into the forearm, inner forearm. Okay, injected into the skin in the inner forearm. So if the particular area where this particular injection has been taken, if it is raised above 5 mm, it means, that is, if it is raised above 5 mm within 48 to 72 hours, it indicates a TB infection. It's a very simple test. Okay, no complications. If the area is raised by 5 mm or more within 48 to 72 hours after taking this particular injection, it means that the person is infected with tuberculosis. Okay, so this particular intervention, why is it important? Because it is a very user friendly technology. All this while we've not had this kind of a user friendly technology to detect this particular infection, TB infection. Having TB disease and having TB infection is two different things. I'll tell you how it is different. Fine. So this is the basic idea of what CYTB is. Now we look into what exactly tuberculosis is. Okay. So you might have heard, it's very common. TB, tuberculosis is something that is extremely common in a country like India. It's very common in a lot of developing countries as well. So this particular bacterial infection, okay, first of all, whenever we study a disease, it's very important to know if it's caused by a virus, or it's caused by a bacteria, or any other sort of microorganism, or any other sort of organism. So in this case, tuberculosis is caused by bacteria. So it is a bacterial infection, and the strain that causes this particular tuberculosis is Mycobacterium tuberculosis. So it can practically affect any organ of the body. It's not said that tuberculosis would affect only a single part of the body. It can affect any part of the body. It can, most commonly it affects the lungs. Okay, people have respiratory problems because of this. Most commonly it affects the lungs. And pleura is actually the outer lining of the lungs. Okay, it can affect pleura. Lymph nodes is something which actually protects our body. It is part of the lymphatic system, right? The lymphatic system protects our body from diseases. It can attack the lymph nodes as well. It can attack intestines. It can attack the spine. It can attack brain. So imagine the spectrum of organs this particular organism can attack. Okay, so lungs, pleura, these are the most common places this particular bacteria attacks, lungs, etc. And it is an airborne infection. Okay, so it can be spread very easily with close contact with the person who is infected, or in densely populated areas. That's why it's very common in developing countries, because most of the developing countries are very densely populated. That is one of the reasons why tuberculosis is very, very prevalent in developing countries and in areas with poor ventilation. All right, so since it's an airborne disease, areas with poor ventilation is more prone for this particular bacterial infection to spread. Such situations, it can spread faster. Okay, so far is clear about tuberculosis. Any doubt? Any doubt about tuberculosis? Am I audible? Can anybody respond, please?
Hello, ma'am.
Gautam, am I audible?
Ma'am, in YouTube, your sound is great, but in the class, it's not.
You guys can't hear what I'm saying in the class?
Now it's almost okay, but before it was not that fine.
All right. So did you guys hear anything about tuberculosis, or should I repeat it again? Could you guys just give me a minute, please?
Sure, ma'am.
പിന്നെ ഓഡിബിൾ അല്ല എന്ന് കുട്ടികൾ പറയുന്നു. എന്തെങ്കിലും പ്രശ്നമുണ്ടോ? സൂമിൽ പ്രശ്നമാണോ? ആ, guys, am I audible now?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. I'll just quickly tell you about this once more. Fine. Uh, Basically, CYTB test has been invented or discovered by Kerala government. All right. So what exactly is this test? This test is a highly accurate and highly specific and highly user friendly skin test. Fine. where 0.1 ml dose of Mycobacterium tuberculosis specific antigens. These are proteins that are specific to Mycobacterium tuberculosis. This particular dose is injected into the forearm of the skin, inner forearm of the skin, and 5 mm or more raised area within 48 to 72 hours would indicate that this person is infected with TB. So much is clear about this particular CY-TB test. Can I go ahead? It's clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Yes.
Okay. Now, what exactly is tuberculosis? Tuberculosis is a bacterial infection. All right. It is a bacterial infection. It is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis, and it can basically affect any part of the body. Okay. It can affect the lungs. It can affect pleura. Pleura is the outer lining of the lungs. It can affect the lymph nodes. Lymph nodes are are part of the lymphatic system, which act as a protection against infections or outside foreign agents. So lymph nodes, intestines, spine, brain. So there's a whole spectrum of organs this particular bacteria can affect. Tuberculosis is an airborne infection. It spreads through close contact with the infected person, and that's why this particular disease is very common in developing countries, because developing countries are highly populated, highly packed. Okay, people live in close contact with each other. People live in places with poor ventilation, and that's why the prevalence of this particular disease is more in developing countries. Fine. India has one of the highest burden of tuberculosis in the world. So if you see the list of countries that have this particular disease are mostly highly populated diseases. They are highly mostly populated countries, or those countries that are poor and are developing, lower income countries or developing countries. So about half of all people with tuberculosis can be found in 8 countries, that is Bangladesh, China, India, Indonesia, Nigeria, Pakistan, Philippines, and South Africa. All right. So most of the common symptoms of tuberculosis includes cough. Okay, especially the lung tuberculosis includes cough with sputum. Sputum is mucus, right, which is infected. That is called sputum, and blood at times. Okay, there can also it can also come along with chest pains, weakness, weight loss, fever, and night sweats, sweating at night. Okay, these are the common symptoms of active lung tuberculosis, and every year around 10 million people fall ill with tuberculosis. The burden of this disease is very high. Right? So despite being a preventable and curable disease, what happens is this disease is it goes undetected most of the times, and that's why more than 1.5 million people die from this particular tuberculosis each year, making the world's top infectious killer. Okay, why is it the world's top infectious killer? It's because most of the times this particular disease, it goes undetected. Okay, so it's very important to know about tuberculosis, because it's one of the leading it is one of the highly causating agent for certain disease, this particular disease causing people to die. Okay, so this particular intervention that the Kerala government has brought, what does it do? It actually can detect tuberculosis infection itself, that is even before the tuberculosis disease. Every tuberculosis infection will not advance into tuberculosis disease. Okay, the tuberculosis infection will identify that this particular tuberculosis bacteria causing bacterium is inside the body. Necessarily this does not have to proceed into the tuberculosis disease, because as we see, if we leave this particular status untreated, as in once this particular tuberculosis infection has been identified, and if it goes untreated, only then will 5 to 10% of it progress into active tuberculosis disease. So it's very important to identify once this particular TB infection takes place, so that we can reduce the burden of the tuberculosis disease, especially in countries like India. Okay, so TB infection is very different from active TB disease. A person with TB infection harbors the organism causing the TB infection in the body. Basically, before the TB disease has been detected completely, it first starts with a TB infection where this Mycobacterium tuberculosis is present inside the body. So it most of the times remains dormant. Sometimes it can remain active as well. So he does not necessarily have the symptoms of tuberculosis, and it cannot be contagious as well. Okay, so he is actually in a safer zone compared to the advanced TB stage, the TB disease stage. The TB infection is comparatively a safer zone. Once you detect that the person has this particular TB infection, faster recovery is possible. It necessarily does not have to advance into the TB disease. But what happens most of the times, the TB infection itself goes undetected, and it finally this leads to proceeding of active TB disease, and it can weaken the body's immune system. Okay, so this can occur within weeks of acquiring this particular infection, or it can also occur within months or years of acquiring this particular infection. So this particular test that the Kerala government has brought about, CYTB, it is a very simple test. You can detect if you have a TB infection or not in a very simple manner. So this intervention is actually a very important one, especially considering the burden of tuberculosis in developing countries and lower income countries as well. Is this point clear about tuberculosis? Any doubt?
No, miss.
All right. So we'll go ahead. INS Nistar. So recently, this particular INS Nistar, which has been indigenously built. What do you mean by indigenously built? What is indigenously built?
Made in the country itself.
Made in the country itself without external interventions, without external help, right? So the Indian Navy has introduced INS Nistar, its first indigenously built diving support vessel. What do you mean by diving? Where do you do diving? What is diving?
Swimming into the deep of the ocean.
Yeah, swimming into deep waters is called diving, right? So this particular INS Nistar, it helps in diving. It is a diving support vessel. It is delivered by the Hindustan Shipyard Limited, Visakhapatnam. So what exactly, why do we need this diving support vessel? Many a times we need diver deployments, okay, for many missions that the Indian Navy undertakes. It can be a submarine crew recovery, okay, a crew that's in a submarine, their recovery process may need diving, or any sort of rescue missions, underwater rescue missions may need diving, right? So all of these missions can be helped by this particular diving support vessel. All right, so this particular diving support vessel is a specialized naval ship designed for underwater operations, including diver deployment, rescue missions, and submarine crew recovery. It measures approximately 120 meters in length. Okay, the length is 120 meters. It has an endurance of over 60 days at sea. What do you mean by endurance at sea? What is endurance at sea? 60 days of endurance at sea. What does it mean?
The ability to withstand the sea.
Yeah, the ability to go unreplenished. So once it is sent into the sea, it can withstand the sea for 60 days without being replenished again, without being fueled again, etc. Okay, so it has an endurance of over 60 days at sea. So that is approximately a very long time, 2 months. It can stay in the sea without being replenished again, and it is capable of supporting helicopter operations and is equipped with a 15-ton subsea crane. Okay, there is also subsea crane to facilitate deep sea recovery missions. So in areas where diving may not be possible, or there's something heavier that needs to be carried onto the or carried on board onto the ship, so in that cases a subsea crane is used where this particular deep sea recovery missions can be aided. Okay, So this is about INS Nistar. INS Nistar is an indigenously built diving support vessel. All right, it is used basically for diver deployment, rescue missions, and submarine crew recovery. It measures approximately 120 meters in length. It has an endurance of 60 days at sea, and it is capable of supporting helicopter operations, and it is also equipped with a 15-ton subsea crane to facilitate deep sea recovery missions. Is this point clear? INS Nistar, can I go ahead? All good?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Top quote to hear Article 143 reference on President and Governor's powers on July 22nd. So what exactly happened with the Governor's power and President's power recently? Regarding what was there a news all over? Regarding what did Supreme Court interfere and uh, provide a particular checklist of do's and don'ts to the governor? Do you guys remember? In which context? I think it was a news before 1 or 2 months. It's been almost 3 months, probably. The Supreme Court interfered into the Tamil Nadu issue, right? What exactly was happening in Tamil Nadu? Pending what? Anybody? Pending bills, right? The Tamil Nadu government and the governor was having a tiff regarding the bill, passing of the bills, and the Supreme Court intervened under Article 142, right? We'll see what Article 142 is. We've already seen Article 142, but again, we'll discuss about Article 142. So the Supreme Court suggested the governor to do certain measures to avoid this particular situation, come out of this particular situation, and it gave a list of do's and don'ts to the governor, gives a set of timeline when and how certain bills should be passed within what timeline, and you can't keep it pending forever. Supreme Court actually warned the governor that he was jeopardizing the federal system, the federal essence of our country, right? So it was not, it was primarily meant for the Tamil Nadu government, but also the same scenario has been has been observed in other parts of the country as well, especially in states like Kerala as well, right? So what happened after this particular Supreme Court verdict? President has had invoked Article 143. Okay, so according to Article 143, we'll detail discuss about what Article 143 is. President can ask the Supreme Court if he has any queries regarding anything. Okay, so if he has any queries regarding constitutional matters or any agreements that has taken place, agreements between India and any other country, or before this particular entire system started, if there have been any agreements and covenants, the president can ask the Supreme Court regarding any doubt he has in this matter. So he invoked this particular Article 143 of the Indian Constitution, where he can ask the Supreme Court clarity about certain things. Okay, and he referred a set of 14 constitutional questions to the Supreme Court regarding the same verdict, as in what exactly does Article 200 and 201 entail, what is the justiciability of this particular articles, okay, how can the court interfere, what is the angle of the court interfering in this particular bill passing. All of these questions, set of 14 questions, the president Draupadi Murmu has asked the Supreme Court. Okay, so this move comes after a recent Supreme Court judgment which invoked Article 142 in the state of Tamil Nadu versus the Governor of Tamil Nadu case 2023, imposing timelines on the governors and the president to act on bills passed by the state legislatures. Do you guys remember this particular news that had come? Do you remember? We've discussed this.
Yes,
Anybody?
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Right? We've discussed this particular news where the governor kept the bill pending, and the legislative procedure of the state government itself had been at stake, right? So that is when the Supreme Court had involved in this particular issue, and Supreme Court had passed a certain verdict that the governor should be passing the bills within a certain set of timeline. And post this, the president asked the Supreme Court on what basis, or what are the constitutional, or possibilities of this particular article 200 and 201, which deals with the bill passing by the governor. Okay, so article 200 and 201 basically deals with the passing of bills by the governor. We've spoken at length about the veto powers of governor. If I am sure you guys remember, we've spoken at length about what all kind of veto powers the governor possesses. The suspensive veto, pocket veto, right? And then he can also reserve the bill for the president, right? And the president also exercises veto powers on these bills. The president can exercise absolute veto as well, right? So we've dealt with all of these at length in our previous sessions, where we had discussed this particular news. So post this particular verdict by Supreme Court, the president has asked Supreme Court under Article 143, he has asked set of 14 constitutional questions as to what all are the constitutional possibilities of Article 200 and 201, what is the angle of justiciability, what is the angle of judiciary involved in this particular matter. Okay, all of these questions have been asked by the president. So the reference raises 14 key questions primarily concerning Articles 200 and 201 and the justiciability of executive actions before a bill becomes law. Right? So what exactly is Article 143 of the Indian Constitution? Very simple. If you have to understand this concept, it basically helps the president seek any Supreme Court's advisory opinion on facts or law that are of public importance, okay, which is maybe very prominently being asked right now, or it has been a prominent topic in the past as well. He can ask anything, any question of law or fact to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court can tend its advice to the president, right? So this provision establishes the Supreme Court's advisory jurisdiction. Advisory jurisdiction is that power of the Supreme Court where Supreme Court can tend advices, okay, to the president, and which is exclusive to the president. Okay, so the president and the Supreme Court has that connection where we have doubts and we ask our teachers, right? Just that way, the president of India can ask the Supreme Court if he has any queries regarding any law or fact. It can be a constitutional query. Okay, so there are many sort of many sort of queries. It can be a question of law or fact which is of public importance as well. Okay, in this case, the Supreme Court. So there are two particular articles. Article 143 itself has two particular parts of this article. There are two particular parts of Article 143. The first part deals with the president asking any question of law or fact of public importance which has arisen or which is likely to arise, which is a prominent question, topic that is relevant or it has been relevant in the past. The president can ask this particular question of law or fact to the Supreme Court, and in this case the Supreme Court may tender advice. Supreme Court can decide that okay, we'll help you with this particular fact or law, or it can also deny to tender its opinion to the president. Okay, so either it can provide an opinion or it can deny to provide an opinion. So example, the Supreme Court had declined to provide its opinion in the 1993 Ram Janmabhoomi case. Okay, with respect to Ram Janmabhoomi case, when the president asked certain queries which was relevant at that time, the Supreme Court had denied to provide its opinion. So the Supreme Court can either provide or deny to provide opinion in the case of a question that is of law or fact which is relevant to the time, which is of a public importance at that period of time. Fine. Now Article 143 Part 2, it deals with the president asking questions or it deals with the President referring disputes arising from any pre-constitutional treaty before the Constitution came into origin. Any pre-constitutional treaty or agreement, covenant and agreement, all are the same. Okay, legal document is covenant, sanad is also the same. Okay, agreement, legal document, or other similar instruments. So any question or any queries that he has, or some dispute is arising from certain pre-constitutional treaty or agreement, covenant, sanad, or other similar instruments, he can ask the Supreme Court about what exactly to do in such situations. And in this situation, Supreme Court must tender its advice. It cannot deny to tender its advice. So there are two cases under Article 143. In one case, Article 143 Part 1, the President can ask a question of law or fact of public importance which has arisen or which is likely to arise. Example was in the Ram Janmabhoomi case, he had certain queries and he asked the Supreme Court, but it is not always necessary for the Supreme Court to tend an advice in this case. It can either give an advice or it can deny giving an advice to the President. Article 143 Part 2, it deals with the President asking questions or queries out of disputes arising from pre-constitutional treaty, agreement, covenant, sanad, all of it means agreements or legal documents. Okay, so in this case, the Supreme Court must tender its opinion to the President. Is Article 143 clear? Is it clear?
Yes, miss.
Alright. So now, nature of advice. Okay, in both the cases, whatever advice the Supreme Court gives or it does not give, or in case it gives any advice at all. Okay, in Article 143 Part 1, the Supreme Court can deny giving an advice. In other cases, it has to give the advice. And when it gives an advice, it does not always mean that the President has to act according to the advice. Which means that if it gives a certain advice to the President saying the bill should be passed by the President within 14 days or within 1 month of passing. If the Supreme Court provides that particular advice to the President, it does not mean that the President has to act according to the advice. It is not binding on the President. You get it? It's not binding on the President. So the teacher can give you an answer, the teacher can clarify your doubt, but you necessarily don't have to act according to what the teacher has clarified. Okay, so if the teacher has instructed you to do something or advised you to do something, advised you to do revision at the end of every day, it necessarily not binding on you, right? You don't have to do revision every day to satisfy the teacher, right? So this particular concept that the judgment, the advice given by the Supreme Court or the advice tendered by the Supreme Court in regard to Article 143 is just advisory. Okay, it's not binding on the President. Okay, so he or she may follow the advice tendered by the Supreme Court, or he can not follow the opinion as well. Okay, so it facilitates the government to have an authoritative legal opinion on a matter to be decided by it. It just helps give the President a clarity about certain things. Okay, it gives a clarity about how exactly can the government act on any matter. This particular clarity is given by the Supreme Court advices. Clear? So if the President has to act according to it or not is completely up to the President. It is not binding on the President. Clear? About Article 143, it's very important to know that this particular article is only advisory. It's not binding in nature. Now, what is Article 142? We've seen many times that the Supreme Court can invoke Article 142 to pass any order necessary to ensure complete justice in any matter pending before it. It can be a legislative matter, it can be an executive matter. The Supreme Court can interfere into the matter and it can ensure that complete justice has been granted under this particular issue. We've seen Article 142 many times before. It gives the Supreme Court a superpower actually to interfere in any matter that is pending. And it can take that into its hands and it can give a proper verdict to ensure complete justice. something that has happened in the past is Vishaka guidelines. We've learned about Vishaka guidelines. Do you guys remember Vishaka guidelines? Anybody who remembers Vishaka guidelines? What exactly did Vishaka guidelines deal with? Prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. Do you guys remember now? In this case as well, Supreme Court actually invoked Article 142 to ensure proper, complete justice being given to this particular issue. Right? Vishaka guidelines was one such incident where the Supreme Court involved and invoked Article 142, acted under Article 142. It took the matter into its own hands and it gave proper verdict regarding prevention of sexual harassment at workplace. Okay, so this particular Article 142 basically gives that power to the Supreme Court where it can interfere in any matter to ensure complete justice, so that the exact there's nothing pending. The justice system is not having a void. So to ensure this particular non-voidness in this justice system, Supreme Court can interfere in this in any matter and give complete justice. So this provision allows the court to go beyond the existing laws and procedures to address specific situations and ensure fairness, even if it means filling gaps in legislation or overriding existing rules. So actually, if you see, this particular article gives Supreme Court overarching powers, right? It gives Supreme Court a lot of power. It can fill gaps in legislation as well. So it's actually a huge power that is being given to the Supreme Court, and does not necessarily mean that the Supreme Court always uses it in a very healthy manner, right? Supreme Court can also misuse this particular Article 142. One such instance where Supreme Court used this article unnecessarily was the 99th Amendment Act. We've already discussed about NJAC, National Judicial Appointments Committee. If you guys remember, right? National Judicial Appointments Committee was brought about by the legislation to give a clarity into the judicial appointments process, right? And Supreme Court actually denied this particular NJAC, and they completely told that this particular NJAC is unconstitutional under Article 142. Okay, they can do they can have that overarching power to even suggest that the legislation, whatever legislative procedures are having gaps, or if there are any legislative procedures that do not please the Supreme Court can also attack on these legislative procedures under Article 142. Okay, so it actually gives Supreme Court a lot of power, which may always not be necessarily used in a healthy manner. So the power under Article 142 is broad and discretionary. Okay, it's very broad. Anyway, it can be interpreted in any manner, and that itself gives that particular article its dangerous edge, because Supreme Court can interpret this Article 142 whichever way it needs. Okay, and it's discretionary. It can act according to its own will, does not need anybody's recommendation. Supreme Court does not need anybody's recommendation in doing so. The Supreme Court can pass any order it deems necessary for complete justice, even if it means going against established legal principles or procedures. Okay, so far as clear. Article 142. Can I go ahead? Can I go ahead, guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So this is just that point where I told that judiciary can use it unnecessarily as well. The concept is called judicial overreach, which we've already discussed in class. Okay, judicial overreach and judicial activism. We've discussed the difference between judicial overreach and judicial activism. Activism is when a judiciary does what is necessary, like for example Vishaka guidelines, taking that matter up and giving the prevention of sexual harassment at workplaces a proper clarity. That is judicial activism. Judicial overreach is when judiciary tries to overshadow legislature and executive procedures. Okay, so this particular Article 142 can be misused by the Supreme Court. Okay, it can lead to judicial overreach. Now, what are the governor's powers over bills? Article 200 of the Indian Constitution outlines the process for a bill passed by the Legislative Assembly of a state to be presented to the governor for assent, who may either give his assent, withhold his assent, he can pocket veto it, or reserve the bill for consideration by the president, or he can also return the bill, right? He can also return the bill back into the house. That is called suspensive veto, right? Article 201, it states that once a bill is reserved for the consideration of the president may give his assent to the bill, or he can withhold the assent of the bill, and he can withhold it how much ever time he wants, right? And the president may also direct the governor to return the bill to the house or the house of legislature for the state for reconsideration. He also can return the bill to the house, suspensive veto. He can act upon the bill in suspensive veto. He can use that suspensive veto power. He can also use absolute veto power. The president can also use absolute veto power, where he does not have to give his agreement to the bill at all. Once suspensive veto is given, we've already seen that once a bill has been returned back to the legislature and then it has been resubmitted to the governor has to provide his assent, right? So that is suspensive veto. Once a bill has been tabled on governor's bench, okay, the governor can either give his assent, he can either withhold his assent, which is known as pocket veto, or what can he do? He can give it back to the legislative assembly for reconsideration. He can say that, see, I'm not okay with certain provisions, can you just recheck it? Now the state legislature can either change the provisions of the bill or not change the provisions of the bill at all, and if it resubmits back to the governor has to accept the bill. But in the case the governor reserves the bill for the president and the president returns back this particular bill to the state legislature, and the state legislature without corrections, it gives back to the president can again resubmit it back. The president does not have to necessarily agree to the bill once this particular bill has been resubmitted. Okay, so this clause where the president can infinitely do this process, or it does not have to give he does not have to give his assent once the bill has been resubmitted, this power is known as absolute veto power. So the president enjoys absolute veto power only with respect to state bills, okay, bills passed by the state, and the governor does not enjoy this particular absolute veto power. Fine. So article 200 and 201, both of the articles deal with governor's powers on bills, over bills. So these articles were the ones that were taken care of by the Supreme Court. Okay, is this point clear? Can I go ahead?
Yes, miss.
Right. So we have one topic, Offshore Areas Atomic Minerals Operating Right Rules 2025. So I don't think we have the necessary time to finish this particular topic. I'll take this topic tomorrow. This is the last pending topic. So before we wind up the class, I will just quickly see our, it's been quite a while since we've done our countries, right? So we'll quickly study 3 countries today and have a quick revision. What is the capital of Cameroon? Anybody? What is the capital of Cameroon? What is the capital of Cameroon? Yaoundé, right? And currency is?
Central African franc.
Central African franc. Okay. What about Central African Republic? What is the capital of Central African Republic?
Bangui.
Bangui. Okay. And the currency is?
Central African franc.
What about South Sudan?
Khartoum.
No, South Sudan, not Sudan.
Cuba.
Juba. Okay. Currency?
South Sudanese pound.
South Sudanese pound, right? Okay. What about Gabon? What about Gabon?
Udu.
What is the capital of Gabon? Libreville. Okay, it's Libreville. And what is the currency?
Central African franc.
And what is that country between Cameroon and Gabon? This particular country, which is that country? Anybody?
Equatorial Guinea.
Very good. Equatorial Guinea. What is the currency and capital?
Malabo.
Okay, Malabo. And what is the currency?
Central African franc.
Excellent. What about Republic of Congo? What about Republic of Congo? Very close to this place, right? And we had a little confusion as well. What is the Republic of Congo's capital? Brazzaville, right? Brazzaville, and the currency is?
Central African franc.
Okay. What about Democratic Republic of Congo? What about Democratic Republic of Congo?
Kinshasa.
Kinshasa, right? And what is the currency? Did not hear.
Congo.
Congolese franc, right? Congolese franc is the currency of Democratic Republic of Congo, right? Now we'll study two new countries. One is Uganda, Rwanda. Okay, just learn the position. Uganda, Rwanda, Burundi. All of these come close by. They are back-to-back countries, right? Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. So what exactly is the capital of Uganda? Uganda's capital is Kampala. Okay, this is the capital of Uganda. And the currency is Uganda shilling. Uganda shilling. Okay. Next is Rwanda. Rwanda's capital is Kigali. Okay, there's a very famous agreement called Kigali Agreement regarding ozone protection, right? So Rwanda's capital is Kigali and the currency is Rwandan franc. Fine. Uganda Kampala, Ugandan shilling, Rwanda Kigali, and Rwandan franc. Burundi we will study tomorrow. Fine. Any doubt? Is there any doubt?
No, miss.
All clear? So
Yes, miss.
final for the day.
Yes, ma'am.
All
Yes,
right.
miss.
Thank you guys. There was certain technical delays in between. We'll try to
Thank you,
rectify
miss.
it tomorrow. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you, miss.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.